I'd like to call the August 26th, 2021 regular meeting to order at this time. I'd like to introduce the planning commissioners, Mr. Bob Schwartz from Rolling Green, Mr. Leon Smith from Reedy Church, Carol Horton from Port Royal, pardon me, Priscilla Minor from Mattapani, and I'm George Weaver, and I represent Madison. Staff we have here tonight is Mike Fincham, who's Director of Planning, Chris McKenzie, who's our County Attorney, David Nunley, there's David Nunley, our Environmental Planner, Craig Pennington, our Planner, and Lisa Zeck, our Administrative Assistant and Planning Tech. I'd like you all stand now and let's have the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag, to the republic, which is stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First thing I'd like to do is have a motion to approve the minutes from May 27th and June 24th. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries. Minutes are approved. This is the public hearings. So things are a little different tonight. I'd like Lisa Zeck to read the protocol for the public hearings. Please, Lisa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. The purpose of a public hearing is for the Caroline County Planning Commission to listen carefully to the verbal expression of position and opinion from the citizens of Caroline County. Public hearings are not question and answer sessions or debates, and all statements should be addressed to the chair. When members of the public offer comment, they need to clearly state their name and address prior to making their comments. Applicants or their representatives will be allowed 15 minutes to introduce information regarding the matter advertised for public hearing. Persons speaking at public hearings are respectfully requested to keep comments brief, not to exceed 3 minutes, and to address only those issues pertinent to the matters advertised for public hearing. We will have a timer up here that you all will be able to see to assist everybody in keeping their comments within the 3 minutes. After the public hearing has been closed, the applicant or representatives of the applicant will be allowed 10 minutes to address any issues identified by the public, and the same timers will be available to the applicants as well.
Thank you. And please be aware, we are going to look at the clock because we have a lot of information to review tonight. Okay, the first thing we would do is do SPEX 03 2021. Brown Sandra, owner and applicant. Can we have the staff report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. SPEX 03 2021. The applicant, Sandra Brown, is seeking a special exception permit approval to establish and operate a 25-bed assisted living facility in an existing building on Route 301. The structure has been vacant for a number of years, having last operated as a motel. A special exception permit, SPEX 11-2012, for an assisted living facility was approved in 2013, but the permit expired due to inactivity. The property is zoned RP, Rural Preservation, which allows for an assisted living facility under a special exception permit. No comments were received by VDOT at the time of the staff report. However, we've received VDOT comments at this time, and they've commented that the entrance shall be constructed to VDOT standards, according to their manual. Property was connected to the Dawn centralized sewer system as a residential unit under the supervision of the Utilities Department. The proposed use will require an upgrade, additional pump station, and associated fees. The building official permitted limited improvements to weatherproof the structure as the structure had fallen into a state of disrepair. The work performed exceeded that authorized to weatherproof the structure, resulting in a stop work order that is still in effect. Should the SPEX permit be approved, then the building plans can be reviewed and approved for full renovation. Caroline County Comprehensive Plan identifies this area as planned development and within the Dawn growth area. The use appears to be generally consistent with the comprehensive plan. And staff offers the following suggested conditions for the project. The two which shall be recorded in the court within 30 days. The regulations of the Commonwealth of Virginia associated with the license to operate an assisted living facility shall be incorporated as conditions associated with this application. A copy of the initial license issued by the Department of Social Services will be provided to the Department of Planning and Community Development upon receipt. Copies of subsequent license renewals by DSS will also be provided. The total number of occupants residing at the facility shall not exceed 25. Full site plan, including but not limited to parking, landscaping, sewer connection, existing entrances, parking areas, lighting, and erosion and sediment control shall be submitted and approved prior to building permit approval. Failure to obtain a certificate of occupancy within 2 years from the date of the issuance of the special exception shall render this permit null and void in accordance with Article 12, Section 13 of the zoning ordinance. And this Article 17, Section 13 of the zoning ordinance. This special exception permit is subject to a 2-year review from the date of issuance of the certificate of occupancy by the Board of Supervisors.
Hey, Greg, could you just go back to two of those comments that were there? I just want to make sure I heard them right.
The conditions or the comments?
Conditions.
Conditions. Regulations of the Commonwealth of Virginia associated with a license to operate the assisted living facility shall be incorporated as a condition. A copy of the initial license issued by the Department of Social Services will be provided to the Department of Planning and Community Development upon receipt, and copies of subsequent license renewals by DSS will also be provided. Total number of occupants residing at the facility shall not exceed 25. A full site plan, including but not limited to parking, landscaping, sewer connection, existing entrances, parking areas, lighting, and erosion and sediment control shall be submitted and approved prior to building permit approval. Failure to obtain a certificate of occupancy within 2 years from the date of the issuance of the special exception permit shall render this permit null and void.
Okay, thank you, Craig. That's the one I was looking at. Okay. Are the commissioners allowed to ask any questions prior to opening this, Ms. Zek?
Yes, you can,
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Weaver.
Okay. Are there any questions from the commissioners before I actually open this public hearing? Is that
I
okay?
would rather wait till after.
You wait till after. Okay. All right, fine. And this is the site plan that we're going on, these site drawings?
Yes, that's correct. The site plan that came with the packet is the current GDP.
All right, so then I guess we'll ask the applicant to make their presentation. Correct? May the applicant please stand up and make their presentation in reference to this application. Thank you.
Good evening. Nice to be with you all. I'm John Bennett with AES Consulting Engineers. We're the civil engineer representing the owner, the applicant. I'll keep it brief if I can here tonight. I think Craig and staff have done a nice job of reviewing the general development plan. We've intended to adhere to all the dimensional requirements and worked with staff to get to this point to really allow the project to move forward with the special exception for the assisted living use on the site. We do intend to continue to work with staff as needed through the site plan process, and obviously they have a building permit process to go through as well for the building itself. The owner and the contractor are here as well. If there are questions at some point tonight, they are here to answer those as well. But really the intent for this site is to make good reuse of the existing building, bring this project finally to fruition, to get the parking done, the drive aisle, the various utilities and stormwater improvements that are going to be required as part of the site plan, and certainly maintain a lot of the nice landscaping, existing mature trees that are in front of the site, minimize land disturbance out here, and again, comply with the various county and state guidelines that go with the development of this site. So with that being said, I think staff's done a nice job again of summarizing. We can certainly answer any questions as needed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Can I ask before we go any further, how many parking spaces, since you mentioned parking, how many parking spaces do we have? here?
There's 13 proposed spaces.
Okay, thank you.
Other question?
Sir, hello? Not that concerned outside.
I'm sorry?
Mr. Smith, can you turn your mic on?
I'm not that concerned about the outside of the drawing. I've seen the drawing. It appears to be a good drawing for the outside, how's it gonna work? And the fact that the utilities coming in, it's gonna be great. What I'm concerned about is the building itself. And what I've seen, I don't like. It's going to be a lot of construction that's got to go in there. And a lot of moving walls around to get 25 places in. And the thing of it is, I'm looking at is all the tenants going to have separate laboratory.
Yeah. As far as the inside of the building, really at this point in time, I don't have those plans. I mean, I'm the civil engineer, so really.
You don't have any of that information?
So at this point, and I can defer the owner for any questions about the inside operation of the building, but really I'd say at this point what we're trying to do is get to the next step where we can really develop the building plans themselves to really get to that level of detail.
See, the other thing is the electrical services need to be done, need to be removed, put all electrical in there. You got a lot of doors and a lot of rooms. So then you have some rooms only have one door. So I really have a real problem with this, trying to put in my mind how this thing is supposed to be. Really do.
Understood. And I think what we look forward to is working with building staff as appropriate to really develop the interior drawings for it and those sorts of details.
Okay.
Any other
Sir,
questions?
yes, sir. I see we do not have any issues listed by fire and rescue. And certainly when we're dealing with an assisted living facility, we're going to have elderly persons, we're going to have some with physical handicaps. And I'm wondering, do we have a plan in place already to take care of these folks should there be an emergency such as a fire? And I share safety concerns for an exit from the building should there be something going on. And I just want to make sure that there is something in place in that eventuality.
The short answer is yes. So we have to, that's part of building permit review, and those sorts of details have to be developed as part of our permit process. And Sandra, feel free. Sandra Brown is here as the owner, and I'll
Great.
let her.
Hi, my
let her
name
speak
is
up.
Sandra and I'm the applicant.
Good evening.
Back to the question about is shared bathrooms. It would be 2 clients to a room. Maybe some rooms will be private and those rooms would have individual restrooms. And as far as the emergency care go, it will be licensed staff there 24 hours a day, where it would be a registered nurse on board, a administrator, nursing assistant that's required by licensing social services.
All right, so let me understand correctly. The semi-private rooms having 2 occupants would share 1 bathroom. The private residents would have a singular bathroom for
Yes, sir.
themselves. Do you know at this stage how many rooms are designated as private and semi-private?
Well, it could go either way. It could go like 24 clients, and it was thought of 22 clients in 2 private rooms. So it depends on the need.
Okay. All right. I understand. Thank you. I guess my next question is, we were in this same situation in 2015. And I understand, as with any business, certain things have to fall into place in order to come to fruition. And in 2015 to 2017, we were not able to do that. Therefore, the special exemption died a natural death. And I'm not trying to embarrass anyone or put anyone on the spot, but are we in a different position at this point to be able to go forward within a reasonable amount of time? And when I say reasonable, I'm speaking of approximately 12 months.
Yes, sir.
Not necessarily to completion, but at least to get moving forward to completion.
Okay, we are. At that time, I sort of got sidetracked and opened a facility, which is now Brownstone in the city of Richmond. And I am the administrator of that facility, and you're welcome to kind of look it up, but it's been going very well.
Good. So what do you anticipate would be your let's get this ball rolling moment? When do you anticipate being able to start and move forward?
Well, as soon as we get the exception permit approved, then the construction, will continue and go from there.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Ms. Brown.
All right.
And thank you, Mr. Schwartz, for that question, because that has been something that has been eating on the back of my brain, is the mere fact that we approved this once before. And I mean, I know you went through the process.
Yeah.
The trouble is, through the process, we accomplished nothing. And that bothers me.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm glad you asked that question. Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. Thank you, ma'am, for the answer.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right. All right, then I'm going to open. Well, I'm going to open it. Make me hit you. Okay. I'm going to now open the public hearing for SPEX03 2021. Does anybody here wish to speak for or against this application at this time? Does anyone wish to be heard in reference to application SPEX03 2021 at this time? We cut this down to 2 times, or we share? Okay, we decided we don't have to do it 3 times, we can do it twice. So at this particular time, I'm going to close the public hearing. All right, any discussions, questions? Carol?
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with Mr. Smith. I think it's a great plan. I'd like to see it happen. I would like to see a little bit more about the building plans. Just to be assured of the safety of the residents and make sure what we're approving, is appropriate. But I think it's a good facility to be there.
So now at this particular time, it's really going to be up to the building department to mandate what's going to go on inside, I believe, Carol.
Yeah, but sometimes we do receive building plans in advance.
I know, well, it had. This is much more than we got the last time, Carol, so. I tend to agree with Mr. Smith, okay? And I also happen to agree with Mr. Schwartz and the fact that I just do not want to see this die again. We're going to do it, then please commit to getting this done. That's just my comments. Okay, Mr. Kenzie?
Mr. Chairman, and my fellow commissioners, correct me if I'm wrong. Before a CO can be issued, it's going to have to be up to present building codes as far as electrical, sewer, water, everything else. I don't believe DSS will be a part of any licensing if they do not have an emergency plan in place. So I think maybe some of the things that we're sharing concerns about may not be concerns really for us, but going down the road as the improvements are made and the construction goes forward, any areas that are problems would be taken care of, because everything is going to have to be up to code before a CO is issued and
Correct.
before any licensing is issued. So I'll just throw that out there.
So,
Do we think, it's 25 residents, correct? 25. Do we think 13 parking lots spaces is adequate for visitors and staff?
That may be a bit of a problem. I just don't know. To me, that's looking into a crystal ball and seeing how many visitors are we going to have at any one particular time, as well as how many staff members are going to be there at any one time.
Commissioner.
So 13 may not be enough.
Commissioner Horton, the zoning ordinance requires 12 and a half parking spaces. And so 13 is the required number of parking spaces for this type of facility.
so according to Craig, he says this meets our present code.
I think maybe Mr. Okay.
Okay.
That's all that I would have, sir.
Yeah,
Priscilla, you had something you wanted to discuss?
Are we entitled to the plan of the rooms and stuff like that, what size and stuff like that?
Well, that's going to go to the building department. I don't think it's going to come to planning commissioners.
That would go to the building department for a building permit.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to see it, Priscilla, I'm sure we can
To Mr.
contact the building department and say, hey, when that comes up, can we take a look at it?
Yeah, and to Mr. Schwartz's point, DSS will also be involved in the process of opening business, because they'll need to meet all their licensure requirements under state code and the administrative code.
And that was my point. I mean, it's not required, but lots of times when we see these things, we do have a building plan, instead of just an overall landscape.
I agree with you.
Well, can you hear a motion from somebody, please?
And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion, please.
Please do.
Whereas special exemption request SPEX 03-2021 for Brown Assisted Living Facility appears to be generally consistent with the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan and future land use map. And whereas the public necessity, convenience, general welfare, and good zoning practices warrants the approval of this request, I recommend that SPEX 03-2021 be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors with a recommendation of approval.
I have a second. I'll second.
Your vote?
You're entitled to discuss it if you want, now that you've made the motion, or you can call the vote.
I second the motion, and I call for a vote. Okay. Mr. Schwartz?
Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
I vote yay.
I'm going to abstain at this time. Just because I'd like to have more information, that's all. Because I think it's a good project. So
All right,
abstain.
So now what do we do, sir?
So that's a tie vote, so the motion failed.
Okay.
So you can make another motion if you'd like, but,
No,
yeah, you
you
don't,
made
you
a
don't.
motion. So the motion fails, so now they have to what? Bring it back again, round again?
Or, I mean, there can be a motion to table it.
You can defer it to another meeting, yep. You want to,
Defer it until we have more information. Mr. Smith, it's in your district, correct?
In your district, Leon. It's in your district. Do you wish to table it at this time?
So you want the table?
They can't hear you so well. All right. Well, then I would recommend at this particular time, we make a motion to table it this time until we get more information. Is that okay, Mr. McKenzie? Okay. Gentlemen, we're going to defer this application to the next meeting so we can get additional information that it looks like we may need to approve or disapprove this application. Okay?
Okay, so Mr. Weber, you're
Okay.
making the motion to defer.
Make a
You're
motion to
making that.
defer.
yeah, so well,
And I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. Motion carries. To defer until next meeting.
yeah,
I cannot hear that, gentleman.
I hear you, but, yeah, we can't have comment.
Okay, so we pick this back up again at the next meeting.
That's correct.
In that particular case, Carol, what you would like to see is something that relates to the interior.
Just a little bit more information, because I think, still think it's a good project. Just like to have a little bit more information so we can contact staff and see what they've got.
Craig, can you pass on to the applicant the concerns about, would like to get some rough idea of what they intend to do inside of that building?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Here we go. All right. All right. We're going to go on to RZ 06 2021 Burke Development. And I guess we're going to do both at the same time, Ms. Eck? Both in the same time?
Yes, Mr. Chairman,
And-
staff is going to give a staff report for both. The applicant can speak to both. Public
Okay, and
hearing
we're
will
gonna
be for
do-
both.
We're going to do SPEX 04 2021, also Burke Development. Can we have the staff report on both, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First staff report will be for RZ 06 2021. The applicant is seeking approval of a rezoning to include parcels 40-A-22 and 40-A-22A in the Solar Energy Overlay District. The rezoning is necessary to include the parcels in the special exception application SPEX 04-2021. These two parcels are presently outside of the overlay district boundaries. As such, these parcels cannot be utilized for the requested major solar energy facility without amending the overlay district boundaries. There are no plans to place solar equipment on these parcels, and they will remain vacant upon completion of the project. During the construction phase, these two parcels will be used as a laydown area for supplies and equipment during construction or repair if approved. The underlying zoning district is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Amending these two parcels for inclusion in the major solar energy overlay district is not inconsistent with the comprehensive plan designation for this area. Staff report for SPEX 04-2021. The applicant is seeking special exception permit approval for a major solar energy facility as set forth in Article 15, Section 23 of the zoning ordinance. This project is situated on multiple parcels totaling 1,682 acres, with approximately 655 acres utilized for solar panels and equipment. The proposed facility is located on Page Road, west of the intersection with Sunshine School Road. VDOT has provided comments regarding labeling and analysis for turn lanes movements. The applicant has addressed all planned comments. The Director of Fire and Rescue has raised concerns about the height of vegetation and vehicular access. The applicant is in ongoing conversations with the Fire and Rescue Department to address those concerns, which have not been adequately addressed at this time. All planning comments regarding labeling has been addressed. The Caroline County Comprehensive Plan identifies this area as rural preservation. This project is situated within the Solar Energy Overlay District boundaries, with the exception of 2 parcels. A rezoning of these 2 parcels has been requested under RZ 06-2021. This project, with the exception of these 2 parcels, is consistent with the comprehensive plan if approved by the Board of Supervisors. Should RZ 06-2021 be approved, then these 2 parcels will be included in the Solar Energy Overlay District. Should RZ 06-2021 be denied, then these 2 parcels do not qualify for consideration as part of the project. And the planning department is currently working on suggested conditions for this project. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, first question I have is, do we have to act on RZ 06-2021 before we act on SPEX 04-2021? Mr. Attorney?
We'll have separate votes on them, but I think if your question is, sometimes we get these where the special exception is mooted if the rezoning isn't approved. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Pennington, but this isn't one of those situations. The question on the rezoning is, can those 2 additional parcels be included in the project? And if the rezoning isn't approved, I believe the special exception would still move forward. But correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, that's correct. If the rezoning is denied, the special exception can move forward, but cannot utilize those 2 parcels that the rezoning has been requested on. So the special exception is not directly tied to the rezoning. So you could motion on either one.
So they can basically be separate.
Correct.
Okay, just making sure.
You can take them in whichever order. You probably, do the order that they're presented in, but they're not it's not like one of those situations where the special exception is predicated on the approval of the rezoning.
Well, in one particular case, I'm dealing with 1,682 acres. In another case, I'm dealing with 20. And I just don't want, again, the tail to wag the dog. That's just what I'm.
Sure, you could, if that's your pleasure, you could take the special exception first if you wish.
Okay, I guess we'll allow the applicant to make his presentation or her presentation at this particular time. And then we can hear all the pluses and the minuses.
Good evening, thank you. Planning Commission, members of Caroline County, it's a pleasure to be here before you tonight. My name is Rob Propes, and I'm with Urban Grid. Thank you for this opportunity to share some more information with you about these 2 requests. Would you like me to start with which request? I didn't know where you wanted me to start based on the discussion.
No, as long as I know we can separate it, you can,
okay,
whichever one you would like to discuss.
I'll go ahead and share some information based on the order in which they were presented to you tonight. So first, the rezoning request. So just a few additional highlights to add to what Craig already shared with you. We are requesting a recommendation for approval to rezone 2 adjacent parcels, which is 40A22 and 40A22A, which, as you heard, total approximately 20 acres to be included in the Solar Energy Overlay District. That the parcels would be owned by the applicant and used as a laydown area to support the construction and maintenance activities associated with the solar facility that I'll be talking about in a moment. The two contiguous parcels are adjacent to the project and located on the western side of the project along Sunshine School Road. The ordinance did contemplate a specific situation where parcels located at the boundary of the 2-mile limit from an existing transmission line could be rezoned to include them within the solar overlay district. This type of action was also contemplated by the ordinance in order to adapt the arbitrary 2-mile line to the actual physical layout on the ground. The parcels are appropriate to be used as a laydown area for the project and won't change the underlying zoning district or expand the areas where solar panels are allowed. Amending the district boundary is also consistent with the Caroline County Comprehensive Plan, which is including more land in the overlay district by promoting economic growth while preserving the county's natural resources. The location of the property at this westernmost portion of the project, along with its proximity to the interstate, will provide the most immediate and least intrusive vehicular access to the project and contribute to the goal of minimizing construction traffic through the project area. I'm happy to answer any questions at this time regarding this particular request before you tonight. Okay. Go through the presentation.
All right, I think I'd like it if you could go on with the next
Sure.
application.
Yes, sir.
Mike, and then we can.
Okay, very good.
Please. Thank you.
I wanted to share a little bit about with you about Urban Grid, who we are as a company, because I think it's very important that you know who the applicant is that's proposing a multi-million-dollar facility in your county. We are a leading developer of utility-scale solar power plants in the Mid-Atlantic United States. We deliver solar energy projects that are a vital source of clean, renewable energy. We were founded in Richmond, Virginia in 2011. We have offices in Richmond, Virginia, Washington, D.C., and Stevensonville, Maryland. We have over nearly 500 megawatts of operating solar projects in Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, New Mexico, and New York. And we have more than 10,000 megawatts of solar projects under development in 9 U.S. states. We have a proven track record of developing quality projects, which I think are borne out in just a sampling of the projects here on the next slide. Some of the projects that we have in various stages from in operation to pre-construction throughout the Commonwealth. One of the things I wanted to touch on briefly was our commitment to public outreach. We believe solar offers many benefits with few downsides within a community, and therefore we strive to provide people with the information about our company and the facts about solar energy. And we work hard to pursue projects in a transparent environment. To that end, we've reached out to several community organizations over the past year in Caroline County to offer a presentation to them about this project. And to date, we've delivered a presentation to the Ladysmith Ruritan Club, Caroline Chamber of Commerce, where we are members. And then just recently, we've also we mailed out postcards to all the adjacent landowners around the project and invited them to an open house to share information, answer any questions they might have. Just some high-level facts about the project. We're located about 1.5 miles east of Page. As you heard, we have about 1,687 acres under control, but the actual area that would be under panel would be about 665 approximately. This would allow us to construct a 150 megawatt project using what's called single access tracker panel systems that track the sun. There's 5 participating landowners, and our interconnection is to an existing transmission line that's owned by Dominion Energy. As far as timing, construction would be slated to begin in late 2022 with a completion date in late 2023. If you're familiar with this particular area, one of the special features about it, it is very remote. and it has a lot of extensive, mature vegetation surrounding the project area because it's the vast majority of it is commercial timberland, and so there's a lot of mature trees around the project edges that would be left in place. Here's a preliminary site plan that was included in your packet, I guess the GDP, just kind of showing you where the panels would be situated approximately, and some of the access points that we've proposed to construct and of course maintain the project. The next slide shows you the wildlife corridors in pink. There's approximately 700 acres that would be preserved as wetlands and vegetative buffer areas. The pink areas I've highlighted are contiguous areas that cross the project and allow the free flow of wildlife. That's really not the only area. The wetland areas that I didn't highlight in pink that are on that particular slide, also clearly wildlife habitat. I just didn't highlight them because they're not as contiguous as the bands of pink that I did highlight. I just wanted to touch on the economic and community benefits of the project. There'll be an annual revenue share or machinery and tools tax payment that'll be made to the county for the life of the project. There's going to be an increase in assessed real estate taxes from what there is today, somewhere between 6 to 9 times the current assessed value of the land. The switchyard equipment that would be owned by Dominion is estimated at $8.5 million. The value of that equipment would ultimately be assessed by the State Corporation Commission, SCC, and taxes would be paid on that. I'm going to show you a slide that includes the revenues that switchyard equipment is not included in there. And then, of course, there's a $5 million project substation that we would own, and that is included in the revenue that I'll show you shortly. The other thing I'd like to point out is that unlike a housing development, there's no impact to county infrastructure or services with a solar facility. So we are requiring no public water, sewer, additional seats in schools, need for new additional police, fire, etc. So we have a lot of upside in terms of economic impact, but we're not a financial burden to the county. It's also a leverage for attracting a data center or tech companies that have clean energy goals. We've spoken to your county economic development director, and he's talked about his ongoing recruiting efforts of data centers and technology companies, all of which have shared with him their desire to locate near a solar energy facility. Local and regional construction jobs, as well as operation jobs. There's opportunities for contractors that supply gravel, concrete, fencing, landscaping, etc. No daily traffic from operations. While there will be traffic during construction, once this facility is operational, there'll be the occasional maintenance, pickup truck or landscaping folks that'll be out there, but very little vehicular traffic. And finally, the land can be reclaimed for timberland or farming after the facility is removed. Moving on to the economic impacts of the project that I talked about previously, I've broken out what the revenues are currently. That's under the current use column from the property today, a little over $9,000 a year. And then moving across the table going to the right side, with solar year 1, real property tax is estimated at $63,000. The project substation that I mentioned, about a little over $7,000, and the revenue share. So this is a formula that was approved by the legislature to give counties more dollars from solar facilities. It's a simple formula of $1,400 per megawatt. It's a 150 megawatt project, so it's $210,000. So in year 1, estimated revenue to the county is about just over $280,000. Next column over, the current land use. If the land continued to be used as it is today, over 35 years, you're looking at revenue of about $471,000. With solar in place, you're looking at almost $13.5 million in total revenue over a 35-year period. You can see that I put a line in there for the machinery and tools tax, but I didn't calculate that information because it is something that the equipment is assessed by the State Corporation Commission. And it's a decision really that the county needs to make for itself, whether it would elect to tax the project under revenue share or a machinery and tools tax regime. The next slide I wanted to touch on is job creation. Urban Grid is proud to be a sponsor of something called the Solar Hand-On Instructional Network of Excellence, or SHINE. What it is, it's a public-private partnership founded by Southside Virginia Community College, solar developers like Urban Grid, construction companies, and other tech companies, with a mission to develop a qualified and diverse workforce of folks that can rapidly get some rapid training, a few weeks worth of curriculum through Southside Virginia Community College, and be ready to work as an entry-level worker at a construction site for solar. Next slide, just some of the clean energy benefits of solar. As you can see, this is a project that could power approximately almost 26,000 homes and avoid quite a bit of equivalent fossil fuels. This project is aligned with the comprehensive plan objectives. I'm not going to go through all these bullet points, but just to highlight them. The economic benefits of the project are in alignment because of the enhanced tax revenues and economic opportunities for area businesses during construction and the operation. And as I mentioned, the project would not require any new county infrastructure or upgraded services. It's aligned because of the environmental preservation. This project would maintain the rural character and farming heritage of the community. It would not create any odor, air, or water pollution, and it will mitigate soil erosion and runoff impacts. It will produce clean, renewable energy for Virginia. It'll avoid the wetland areas or other environmentally protected land. And as I said before, the land can be returned as timberland or farming at the end of its useful life. And also rural preservation. This project offers a balanced pattern of land use by preserving the rural character of the area with a passive, non-invasive land use. That's all the information I had to share with you. I'm happy to take your questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Probst, we have a lot of folks here tonight, and we're glad to have them. The majority of them have concerns about solar energy. A lot of the questions that we get pertain to decommissioning. And some folks are worried that at the end life, that the county and or the landowner, who's going to pay for the decommissioning? How is that going to be handled? We understand that there is a decommissioning plan in effect, but if you would just very briefly let these good folks know about decommissioning cost and getting the land back to its original use.
Yes, thank you. That's a very important topic, and I'm very happy to take that question on. So as far as decommission, as you said, we will be required to have a decommissioning plan in place, and I think we already have a draft outlined in the application. But essentially, what that does is holds the company that will own and operate the facility legally and financially responsible. And so how does it do that? Prior to construction, the company will be required to put up some sort of financial security, a bond, letter of credit, other types of financial security, based on the cost of removing the equipment. That cost is determined by an independent third-party engineer. And we would have to put up financial security in that amount. that the county could access at any time in the event that we defaulted, on the facility. It didn't operate for 12 consecutive months, or we violated our permit in some way and we didn't cure it. We up and just walked away, or whatever the reason may be. Or after 35 years, we'd said, great, we're leaving, there you go, you clean it up. That's not what I'm suggesting we would do. But what I want to stress is that the county would have those resources in place to remove the facility. And if you're concerned that, well, what about inflation? That's covered as well. Every, I think it's 5 years, the cost of removal is reassessed by a qualified engineer. And if additional dollars need to be put into that financial security, then they're put forth. Kind of a lockbox mechanism, if you will, to assure that the project is removed at the end of its useful life, either by the good actions of the company and doing what they're supposed to do, which is how I would expect it to go, or if the county had to step in and remove it, they would have the resources to do that.
Thank you, sir. Hopefully that answers some of our citizens' questions.
Thank you for that question.
And I have a question about the wildlife management. I have the map in front of me because, as you know, you will be required, I believe it's an 8-foot fence around the facility.
7.
Okay, 7 or 8, something like that. I'm not sure what the county is requiring right now, but, and it looks like you're going to fence in 3 separate areas. Is that correct? So wildlife has paths through between these areas?
Yes.
Am I reading the map correctly?
Yes. Yeah, that's how it's envisioned. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there will not be a contiguous fence around the whole project area. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah, there would be pods, if you will, of areas that would be broken down. I would say probably even more than 3 areas would be fenced, so there would be even more breaks, if you will, in the project area for paths for wildlife to roam.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
So this project will have a lot of lighting around it?
No, thank you for that question. Solar facilities do not have a lot of lighting. The only lighting associated with solar facility is probably at the project substation. There's some lighting there, very, very little bit of lighting. And then at different project access points, so that if there was an emergency at night and you had to go access the gate, you'd have a downward cast light so that it doesn't produce, very much glare, shielded and downward focused. But there would be no general lighting within the solar array itself. Thank you for that question.
And since we're breaking these spaces down into different areas, are we going to provide the same amount of buffers around each one of these areas?
Well, the buffers, the setbacks as well as the vegetative buffers are between adjacent parcels that are non-participating in the project as well as public rights of way. But within the interior of the project, there's not necessarily buffers or vegetation other than the grass, other than the grass.
So basically you're talking about the whole exterior would have the normal buffers around it.
Yes.
But inside, where you're breaking these down into 3 or 4 different spaces, they would be self-contained.
Right, and of course the wetlands would be remained untouched. So that would be vegetative buffer area, if you will.
Any other questions? Ready to open a public hearing? Open a public hearing. Going to open a public hearing? You have something to say, Leanne? Go ahead.
My question is, do you all have one person to make a entrance to go around the whole site in terms of making sure that everything is operating correctly? You don't have anybody that does that?
Yeah, so if I understand your question, do we have maintenance people that make sure that the facility is always in good operation? Is that your question, sir?
Because the reason why I'm asking that question is because some of those units are going out and you got to be replaced. So, and I'm just trying to figure out how long are those units working before they're replaced.
The panels, how long do they last before they need to be replaced?
Yeah.
So the panels are really good. They're rated life for 35 plus years. The solar panels actually only lose about 0.5% of efficiency per year. So even after the 35-year useful life for a commercial facility, it's possible they could have a life in another application because they're still, fairly efficient. But sometimes a breakage could occur with one of them, and we would know that because the facility is monitored 24/7 remotely, as well as maintenance people are out there periodically. But anytime there's a fault in the system or a particular string of panels is not producing the energy that it's expected, there will be a control and command center that's manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that would understand, there's a problem. We need to go check it out and go out there and see, is it just a breaker that needs to be reset? Is it a panel that's damaged? What have you? Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Thank you.
As far as the noise, the solar don't give any kind of noise out around the area?
It really doesn't. There's solenoid motors, electric motors, that drive very long shafts that tilt the panels east to west throughout the day. There's a very small humming sound to them. You would have to be pretty close to that to hear those little solenoid motors, but there would not be discernible sound at the fence of the facility.
That's it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Open the public hearing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would like to open the public hearing for both RZ 06-2021 and SPEX 04-2021. At this time, the public hearing is open. Does anyone wish to be heard on this application at this time? Please step forward.
I'm a little confused because I think y'all had a couple of these going on. And I was more interested in the one that's going on over on Route 2 than out in 639. I think they're asking for 30 acres. And I just wanted to make sure that this wasn't tied into that piece. So, thank you.
This is not the one on Route 2. This is.
Y'all said there were two mixed together. Like all the gentlemen, I can't get it.
Good evening. My name is David Ogle, and I reside at 11264 Page Road. I received the information in the mail, but could not tell exactly from the information how my property would be affected. But I have a pretty good idea based on the language and saying that it's south of Page Road and west of Sunshine School Road. And since it lists Burke Development, I know that they own a good deal of property immediately behind me and along Sunshine School Road. I heard discussion about the buffer for the wetlands and for animal trails, but I didn't hear much about buffers for adjacent properties. I would like to know exactly what is proposed as a buffer, but I would also offer an alternative. Burke Development owns quite a bit of land on Woodford Road, That's where Mr. John Burke lives. And a great deal of property around them and across Woodford Road would seem to serve the same purpose as is being suggested here for the solar installation. And I would much prefer having the solar installation off Woodford Road than I would immediately behind my property on Page Road. I know you're not here to entertain suggestions relative to that. However, you are in a position to recommend denial of this change in zoning. I don't completely understand all the zoning requirements of Caroline County. Perhaps should have made myself a little more educated on that before I came here, but I must have missed the opportunity to be educated on this proposal because I didn't get an invitation to any of the meetings that were held prior to.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this application at this time? Please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dennis Carr. I live on 11043 Page Road. I throw a rock from my house to Mr. Ogle. But anyway, the gentleman, is it Coates? Oh, Coates. Anyway, he was speaking about the wetlands. And correct me if I'm wrong, are we not in the Chesapeake watershed in Caroline County? Chesapeake Bay watershed. Are we not? Yes or no? Are we in the Chesapeake Bay watershed? Yes, I thought
the
we were.
board, just, sir, just so you know, this isn't a Q&A, so the board doesn't answer questions. They're just listening to your.
Well, I'm sorry. We are in Chesapeake Bay watershed. Yes. Well, when it rains, where does the rain go? It runs down the creek, right? All these wetlands we talk about is not going to be disturbed. But where's all this water going to come from, go to when it comes down where all these solar panels are? The attorney, I guess you're an attorney. Let's see the attorney. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. But anyway, all this water is going to fall on, this gentleman said, the concrete and gravel that they're going to put there. Well, where's it going to go? It's going to run to the creek. It's going to run to the river. It's going to run to the Chesapeake Bay. The game preservation, 1,682 acres. You clear it all. What game? What game? I know Mr. Burke personally. I'm not here to start anything, but he's been a tree farmer for many years, done an outstanding job. I've never seen a deer or a turkey or a squirrel or any animal eat a pine needle. They eat oak tree, they eat acorn. The roads. Anybody here familiar with Sunshine School Road? Page Road? You rode up and down them lately? You better be ready for some good bumpy riding. Hey, Sunshine School Road is probably one of the worst roads in Caroline County. Curves, hills, narrow. The gentleman spoke about creating jobs for people in the county. Go to Spotsylvania County, they just did 6,200 acres. Said plenty of jobs and all, but those people up there brought most of their employees with them. So who's going to be employed in Caroline County? He said the taxes are going to go up. Who's going to pay my taxes? Who's going to pay my neighbor's taxes? We're going to pay that. The solar people are not going to pay our taxes. And I'm not thinking about me. I'm here because of my children and my grandchildren. 35 years, I'm You know, I may not be the brightest light bulb here tonight, but I know in 35 years, I'm not going to be here. And I look around, the majority of the people that are here not going to be here. But what are they going to do with all those panels in 35 years? If you look on the news, if you read the newspaper, they bury them somewhere. They don't know what to do with them. They're petroleum products.
Sir,
35 years. What are you going to do? We got school buses.
sir, 3 minutes.
Oh, I'm
Is that-
sorry. I didn't know I was on the time limit, but I apologize for if I'm over. And I'm sure we're going to have another meeting on this, right?
There's only one public.
Only one
comment
public hearing? Okay, well, I'll finish having my say, but like I say, anybody in this room that's never rode up Hayes Road or Sunshine School Road, take a ride, see what it's like. And if I will, one more thing. I see right behind the collector co-op, front of my house, they put a 3-phase line. They're building all the way to number 1 there, 3-phase line to join it in front of my house. Why? Why? Because they're going to buy the solar energy.
Yeah, we need you to wrap it up.
And they're going to buy the solar energy. And I retired from Dominion Energy. I was a lineman for over 25 years. They keep throwing curveballs on me when it comes to electricity. They need that 3-phase for these big motors that are going to hum every night when I sit on my front porch and listen to them. Thank you. I'm sorry I ran over my time.
Anyone else wish to speak on this application? Going once, going twice? Oh, where is it? Okay. No rush, ma'am.
My name is Susan Burns, and I live on 10504 Page Road. The property is directly behind me that they're talking about. Oh, sorry. And I have a pond back there, which is on conjunction of my land and Burke's land. What is this going to do? This, like he was saying, the runoff going to the pond. Now, I know that they've had problems in Callio and Dunsville. I know people who have been repairing these solar farms. They had dams burst. The excavation was done poorly. They've had to redo the excavation. There's a lot of things going on these places that have not been spoken about by the gentleman here. It's just, whatever our property value is going to be, they're going to be down the tank. Who wants to live to a glass farm? Who wants to live next door to that? I don't, but I got to stay where I'm at. But how am I going to sell this place? Nobody's going to want to buy it. Like Mr. Carr said, I'm not going to be here 35 years from now. But I'm going to have to sell this land before I disappear here. And it's just not right that they're doing this. The animals, I have deer come down every night and they sleep in my backyard and they feel safe there. I mean, yeah, they hunt them in the hunting season, but they do come there and there are some wildlife there. But it's just not right. I know Mr. Burke. I'm not going to say anything about him, but I don't trust him. And anything that any company that he is with, I don't trust. I didn't have anything planned out to say other than I'm very upset that this is even happening in Caroline County. This is where you go to be one with nature, sort of. You know, you have land, you have privacy. You don't live in the big city. If you want to live in the big city, go to the big city. Then they put this kind of thing behind my house. Well, no, I don't want that. I don't know anybody, any of you, would you want to live next to a place like that? Where it's just not going to happen the way they say it is. It's never happened. Spotsylvania is having problems with their setup. And that's all. I'm totally against it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to speak on this application? Anyone else want to be heard on this application? In this case, public hearing is now closed.
Mr. Weaver, the applicant now has time to respond if he wishes.
Chris, I don't allow it.
Thank you again for the opportunity to address some of those great questions from folks. Ones that I hear frequently and are quite valid. I wanted to first address the question from Mr. Ogle about the vegetative buffers. He said he wanted to hear more. I'm happy to talk about that. So the current ordinance that Caroline County has passed has some one of the more robust vegetative buffering standards that I've seen across the Commonwealth. It will require us to have setbacks from property lines of 150 feet, and then within that setback have a vegetative buffer that within a short period of time visually obscures the panels. Again, I think what's fantastic about this site is that there's really few areas that we're actually going to need to install any new vegetation. As I said, this is a commercial timbering operation out there that Mr. Burke and some of the other landowners have done a fantastic job managing over the years. And we've already asked them to leave mature trees in place along the edges of adjacent properties, as well as the public rights of way. So we're going to have some very good vegetative buffers. Mr. Carr commented and asked about, or I guess referenced concrete and gravel in the project area. And we actually are not planning to use concrete or gravel under or around the panels. We'll actually plant grass under the panels and between the panels and the fenced area and between the panels, which would be maintained. We'll also be required to install stormwater management features that ultimately require us not to exceed the current runoff at the site. So we're not going to contribute to any additional runoff because of the presence of panels. So we'll have very robust stormwater management features that we'll have to incorporate into the project area. Mr. Carr also said he was concerned about taxes going up, and I think he might have misunderstood when I talked about the assessed value of the property going up 6 to 9 times. That's going to be on the property underlying the solar panels. That's typically what happens when the county assessor reassesses that land. In my experience, it's typically around $10,000 an acre in other parts of the Commonwealth, but the adjacent properties are not impacted. Their property values would not go up because of our solar facility. And then finally, I just wanted to address Mr. Carr's concern about the 3-phase line that's going in front of his house. That's not a line that, we would be able to tap into or to utilize in any way. We're going to a transmission level, line So three-phase power, that line has nothing to do with our project, and we wouldn't be able to tap into it even if we wanted to. So, thank you.
Mr. Probst, if I may, we do listen to the concerns of the citizens. They're our neighbors. They're our friends. This commission had the same concerns when we initially began the solar process. It took many hours of work and research to get to where we are now. So it is not a situation that this commission nor staff undertook haphazardly. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I would much rather see a field full of corn, wheat, or soybean than I would a field full of solar panels. But that's me. People in the solar industry would say it's the most beautiful thing Michelangelo ever painted. That being said, I was shocked and I was amazed when we made our visit to a solar facility. It wasn't a hand-picked facility by someone in the industry, but I think our citizens would be amazed at how well kept the sod. I've seen my neighbors have grass higher than what was at the solar facility. It is predominantly grass on the ground. As to the noise, I think the loudest thing we heard was crickets. And that was with the panels moving. The crickets made more noise than the solar panel motors made. As we approached the facility, we had to really peep between trees to see anything at all of the solar facility, because that's how the buffers are set up. And I really think that our friends, our neighbors, and our citizens will be pleasantly surprised if they saw a facility in operation. It's not what you initially envisioned it to be. With that, are we working on the fire issues?
Yes, sir.
With Captain?
Yes, we have been in conversation with Chief Loftus, and he made a lot of really good points. We've accepted most of them. We were really just waiting for some final language from the planning staff around the conditions, but I think he's presented a lot of really good, reasonable requests, quite frankly.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes.
Mr. Weaver,
No, sir. Public comments closed. Sir, this is not a Q&A. Public comments closed.
Q&A.
It's not a Q&A. Public comment is closed. Sir. No, sir. Sir. I'm telling
Okay,
you.
for the record, at the beginning of the meeting, it was read what the conduct of the public hearing. Individuals are allowed 3 minutes to speak, and you were given your 3 minutes, and it was stated that the applicant has additional time after the public speaks to address any issues that may arise. You will have another opportunity at the Board of Supervisors meeting when they hold a public hearing, and you can also put any additional comments in writing, which will be included in future packets for the Planning Commission or the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you, Mr. Finch.
so all three of these solar projects we're talking about tonight are in the Port Royal district. That's my district. And so I was going to say some of what Mr. Finch said, so Mr. Fincham, so thank you there. As commissioners and also as the Board of Supervisors, which will be your next opportunity to speak, there will be another public hearing at the Board of Supervisors. There is a lot of pressure, as you all know, on Caroline County for development. And we don't take it lightly because we do get a lot of comments from people that would like to see us maintain the rural character. And so we are out and about, like Mr. Schwartz said, researching, visiting solar facilities. We are trying to find projects that will maintain the farmland and that will look green, because we hear from the citizens that that's what we want. We want, less housing and less business, but at the same time, more jobs and more taxes coming into the county from businesses. And so, when we were approached by these solar companies, that is part of what we're looking at. I would like, there was been so many questions tonight. I would like all of my constituents to know that if you go by the planning office, which is over here near the food line, you can get a copy of what our zoning is for these solar energy projects. I'm sure the staff there will be happy to give you a copy. I have a copy in front of me that I've read several times and that we've worked on several times. So we're not taking this lightly at all. We're not taking this lightly at all. And we do continue to look for, as there's pressure on Caroline County to develop, we do continue, particularly for Eastern Caroline County, where agriculture is so important, we do continue to look for projects that have minimal disturbance to the farmland, that doesn't dig up the farmland, that when the project is finished, at some point, it may go back into farmland, and that has buffers around it so that we seem like we're still living in a rural and friendly committee.
You know what, Carol, you're 100% correct. One of my first suggestions when I saw this application was I went up and I looked at the site as close as I could get to it. I would definitely like, I know this sounds kind of weird, but I think I would like these commissioners to take a field trip with somebody of engineering background and could say, here's where the entrance is going to be. Here's where the exit's going to be. I mean, you're talking about a lot of land there. And I mean, I walked for a long time, but I couldn't tell where we were coming off, where we were going in. I just think, I mean, that's the way I feel about it, commissioners. And you're right, Bob, when we went out, we looked at that one solar project. I mean, you and I were amazed, okay? I can remember, and Leah was there too. I remember walking back going, boy, I didn't see anything wrong with that. So I'm not against it, but I would like to know what's really going to be developed there and where is the entrance is going to be. And I mean, you say 150-foot buffer. So that means that whole center area there where most of the trees have already been removed, that's going to be the areas you're working with?
So the 150-foot setback, which is required by the ordinance, is any adjacent properties that are not participating in the project, as well as any public rights of way. So anytime our project borders, Page Road or Sunshine School Road, we have to be set back 150 feet plus have a vegetative buffer in place.
Well, that's just my feeling, commissioners. I would just like to go out and have somebody who's going to build this project tell us where the entrances are going to be and how far away it's going to be and where we're coming in from and where we're exiting. Because we all know it's very nice to talk about how quiet the solar projects are, but it's during the construction time that bothers me more than anything else. Okay, we know that. And they're going to go in there and they're going to bring trucks and heavy equipment. They're entitled to do that. Don't get me wrong. And I'm not against solar energy. I just would like to be more familiar with the intent of this project. Thank you.
And just to note that the general development plan does have the site and proposed site entrances on it. It's marked with a gold star.
And one more time, it's going to take about how many months for construction?
about 12 months.
That's what I thought you said. Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
My feeling is at this particular time, guys, based on what I requested, I'm sorry, based on what I requested, I would prefer to defer these two projects until next month, until I can go and look at a site that tells me where the trucks are coming in and where the cars are going out, so forth and so on. That's just my opinion.
Is that a motion or a suggestion?
I say a suggestion, but maybe one of the commissioners can make it a motion.
Okay, I'll make it a motion. Whereas the general welfare and good zoning practices warrants, I move to defer, and I've got to make two motions, correct?
Right.
Yeah, if you want to defer both, you need to make a motion on each, on the rezoning and the special exception.
Okay, so the first motion, I'm deferring RZ 06-2021 to our next meeting for further discussion.
Need a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.
And for my second motion, whereas the general welfare and good zoning practice warrants, I move to defer SPEX, it's 04, correct?
Right.
2021 to our next meeting for further discussion.
Second.
Heard a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, everybody.
Mr. Chairman, could we take about a 5-minute break, please?
We absolutely can.
Okay.
Is that allowed, Mr. McKenzie?
Is there a
Ready to go back? Ready to go back?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to continue the meeting at this particular time. Yes, sir.
If you don't mind, sir. We keep forgetting to recognize a couple of people for their great help that they give us. Mr. Brian Farmer and Jeff Ball, our IT
Okay, they
people.
are. Sorry, guys. No, and actually now the microphones are so clear, you can actually hear each other.
That's right.
Thanks, guys, really.
We're IT folks, we're used to it.
All right, we're going to reopen the meeting for SPEX 05.
Lisa said, wait.
Oh, Lisa said, wait.
Got to turn back on the recording.
So staff walks out and we have to sit here.
Where's Mike? There's Mike. Well, I think mainly the
Oh, here comes staff.
video.
Greg is out. Greg.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, I want to thank Mr. Fincham. Back in June, I requested some information from him pertaining to rural preservation land that we have here in Caroline. I'm protective of rural preservation, and I was concerned about continuously chipping away at it. Come to find out, we still have over 250,000 acres of land designated rural preservation, and there has not been a great deal of chipping away at it since 2015. So, Mr. Fincham, thank you and the staff and whoever gathered the data for me. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa. Can we open the meeting now? Officially, we're going to reopen the meeting. And we'll start out with SPEX 05 2021. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant, Raysource Solar, is seeking a special exception permit approval for a minor solar energy facility as per Article 4, Section 5.40 of the Caroline County Zoning Ordinance. The facility will be located across two parcels located off Quarters Road, approximately 1.5 miles from Route 1. This project utilizes approximately 53 acres of the 145 acres for solar panels and equipment necessary for operation. This facility will provide up to 12 megawatts of renewable energy to the REC Rappahannock Electric power grid. The applicant is currently in discussions with Old Dominion Electric Cooperative, who purchases electricity on behalf of REC on a power purchase agreement. REC provided a favorable review of the project in 2020 and is currently finalizing their contract with the applicant for this facility. The REC review of this project requires no upgrades to the current transmission system. This facility will connect to the power grid on the larger of the two parcels. Connection of the two sites will need to be obtained by underground connection, as no new overhead lines are allowed by the Solar Energy Ordinance. VDOT comments have been addressed with the new GDP design. The applicant has had a conversation with Fire Rescue to address the comments provided. The comments have been addressed and are awaiting a second review by the Fire Rescue Department. The Planning Department provided minor comments regarding labeling on the GDP, as these items have been addressed as well. The Caroline County Comprehensive Plan identifies this area as rural. The Caroline County Zoning Ordinance allows for minor solar energy facilities in this zoning district by special exception permit, subject to additional design and development standards. And staff is currently working on suggested conditions for this special exception as well. Oh, I'm sorry. The zoning analysis, the application appears to meet the requirements set forth in Article 17, Section 13.d, and Article 15, Supplemental Regulations, Section 8.d, Minor Solar Energy Facility Standards of the Zoning Ordinance. The zoning conditions, Article 17, Section 13.e, states that the Board of Supervisors may specify conditions in granting use permits. and listed are the zoning conditions available.
Mr. Chairman, let me just mention for the record that staff distributed to you all. You should have them some correspondence from a citizen that was provided to staff.
Is your correspondence here?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you for the staff report. I got all those extra papers, so now I can see what I'm looking at, okay? Would the applicant wish to make a presentation at this time?
Hello, my name is Seth Mon with Soul UNESCO. I'm here today representing Racehorse Solar Project. May seem familiar to some of you. I approached the county originally about this project in 2016. Obviously, a lot's occurred since then. We are, certainly pleased with how the county has moved forward with your zoning ordinance, and certainly pleased to have the opportunity to present this project to the commission tonight. Sorry, how do I spell forward? Oh, I'm sorry. A bit about Soul UNESCO. We're a solar developer based here in Virginia. We exclusively do utility scale solar projects here in the Commonwealth. We always like to mention that, given that we have a relatively small sandbox, we can't afford to not live up to our commitments. Word certainly gets around the Commonwealth, and I think we've developed a pretty good reputation with our 14 projects that we have in various stages of development. I think you've already learned a lot about this project from the staff report as far as the general stats go. It's a minor solar project, so a little bit different in size to the one that was presented earlier. There are some other differences besides size that I'll get into. But the big stats are, of course, the estimated fenced-in acreage and the development envelope that we're looking to permit being about a third of the total land size of these parcels. And then also something to point out, which Craig did point out a moment ago, is just that the customer that we're marketing this power to and that we're in late stage negotiations on a draft PPA with is the utility itself. Unlike a lot of these projects who sell to third-party buyers offsite out of county, one thing that we want to tout about this project is it will be power to renewable energy powering the local grid and to the benefit of the local ratepayer. ODEC is mandated as a co-op to not enter into purchase agreements that they don't feel are in the interest of their customer because they're owned by the customers. So we say and we mean it in the interest of the local ratepayer. Single axis tracking technology. You guys have toured these sites before. This is what's predominantly used in the Commonwealth these days. I think you're pretty familiar with this technology. What's shown there is standard next tracker technology. This site will use that or an equivalent. Inverter pads, again, I know you guys are all pretty familiar with these sites. This site will have 4 to 6 of these inverter pads on site. Pretty stationary objects that don't move, don't really are maybe 10 feet in height, and that's the tallest piece of infrastructure on site as far as the solar infrastructure. One difference between this and a transmission scale project is the interconnection equipment. Unlike the transmission level projects, which require an additional substation to be built on site, we can interconnect these smaller sites using infrastructure that fits on a few utility poles. Here's an example of such a set of infrastructure right here in that picture. I'm going to talk about our general development plan a little bit. First, I want to point out a change that we made recently to the plan. You guys have the original plan in your packet, and the new plan dated 8/20 should have been distributed as well. Between these two drafts, we finalized our wetland delineation and had it confirmed by the Army Corps of Engineers. As such, we identified a wetland area that we hadn't previously identified, and we were pleased to be able to pull our development envelope out of there, committing to avoidance of that wetlands. We've also got a little more granularity on areas that we think are and aren't going to be designated RPAs when it gets to that point, and we're got a little more granular on 100-foot setbacks versus 50-foot setbacks from wetlands, where the 100-foot setbacks we think will be required. Of course, want to stress that things like RPA identification, wetland avoidance, those are all covered by permitting processes that occur after zoning. We will be going through the DEQ PBR process, stormwater management, and erosion and sediment control, all having to do with wetlands. So this is certainly not the final opportunity to be reviewing wetland issues. Many projects are permitted with just desktop wetland data. We know that runoff and wetlands are an important thing that are considered in this county. We're really pleased that we do have this delineation information, and we're able to get you the most up-to-date information and commitments pertaining to that, and that's the reason for this new draft. Those are the only changes between this and the previous draft you've seen. It's just slight movement on the development envelope to accommodate all the wetlands that we know about at this point, and equipment to working through the appropriate processes to make sure that we do indeed avoid any wetland contact or disruption. So moving on to that general development plan, the development envelope adheres to the setback requirements that you guys just developed in your ordinance recently. As you can see, wetlands and other environmental attributes really mean that our setback is greatly in excess of sort of the minimum setbacks. Along adjacent properties for minor projects is 50, and a lot of areas were 100, 200, 1,000 feet from the property line. Part of the reason why we're only using a third of this property is, frankly, a lot of wetlands make up the perimeter of the property, and we're going to be pulling way back from those. Other features of this are, of course, topo lines, our delineated wetlands, as I've discussed, proximity to neighboring homes, electrical easements. And then moving on to the other pages, we get a little more detail. Here we have a sort of preliminary layout. The purpose of this is to show what a project of that size would look like within this development envelope. This is the northern part of the property. We also have more information on our buffer areas and our kind of base commitments today, and that is, again, in line with what was put in that ordinance recently, essentially half of the setback, 25 feet along adjacent property and 75 feet within the right-of-way setbacks. Of course, again, along most of this property where it abuts adjacent properties, we've got a lot of wetlands, so that buffer is effectively tripled, quadrupled, or more, leaving little chance that a lot of these neighbors would have any possibility of knowing anything was going on in that site beyond what it's been used for, for the past however many years. Again, we got the southern part of the site shown here, and here we definitely want to stress that we recognize that there are a lot of residential neighbors to the site along the road there. That's certainly something that we've always known about this project, and certainly something that we knew that we'd have to accommodate. One pro of the way that you guys structured your ordinance is that you require a much higher setback along right-of-ways. Fortunately, that's where we have all the neighbors here, so that added setback and buffer is in excess, frankly, of what an adjacent neighbor would get or be entitled to per your ordinance. And what neighbors across the Commonwealth have got on other projects that I've developed and others have developed across the Commonwealth. It certainly wants to make sure that we're not disrupting these neighbors' way of life. And I think the 150 feet setback plus the 75 feet buffer is more than enough to do that. Many other projects have proven adequate setbacks or adequate visual screening with lesser commitments. Additionally, we talk a little bit about our plan within those buffer areas. The ordinance is pretty specific about needing to obscure the view within a certain amount of years. Our plan here is to immediately plant 4-foot tall evergreen trees, 2 rows, 15 feet on center. We propose green giant arborvitae, which are known for growing quickly and also growing outward. We think that should, in the near term, provide a very sufficient buffer as the project is constructed and in the early years. And then we've also committed to essentially a hands-off policy in that 75 feet. We think the best way to have a natural, robust, lasting buffer is to simply let the natural vegetative cycle take hold in those areas. We've all seen recently cleared land in these areas. After 3 or so years, you have pretty thick buffer there just naturally. 75 feet of that, I believe, would be sufficient in addition to those evergreen plantings. And also per your ordinance, we'll be developing more details of that plan, submitting it for approval prior to construction, and also submitting a bond to ensure, or some sort of financial surety, perhaps not a bond, to ensure that it does meet the screening requirements. If not, the county will have the option to take it into their own hands with our money. Decommissioning always comes up. It's come up already tonight. Your ordinance deals with this very much in line with what other counties have developed here in the Commonwealth, and we're happy to sign on to that commitment. Essentially, we put forth a decommissioning and rehabilitation plan for the land. The objective is to ensure the land is in a state suitable for its current use at the end of this project life. We will put forth a plan for review and approval by the county as part of the final site plan process. Additionally, we'll have that estimate of the cost of decommissioning and rehabilitation, and funds will be put forth. In the unlikely event that the owner of this project is unable to complete the process themselves, there will be funds available, again, for the county to take it into their own hands with the project's money. Happy to answer any further questions on that, but I feel like that's been covered a bit this evening already. And then environmental permitting, just want to stress that zoning is not the final step, it's the first. There's a lot of questions about environmental attributes and ramifications of these projects, and there is a robust set of standards and permits that we must achieve and go through in order for this project to ever come to fruition. The first and most robust, perhaps, is the permit by rule process that DEQ has put in place for these sorts of projects. We have to do extensive field survey and another chance for public comment and public review in order to pass that. And obviously review from DEQ and the other relevant agencies. We've also brought a representative from Kimley Horn who will be handling this process for us and who has handled many of the surveys that have already happened on this site. They can speak to this process more if folks are interested. A little bit of due diligence that we've done to date. We've done a fair amount of desktop due diligence and don't anticipate any problems when we do need to go in the field for things like cultural resource survey. In addition, we've done a topo survey in the field, phase 1 environmental site assessment, the wetland delineation, as I mentioned earlier. All of those have come up indicating that this project won't have problems in the DEQ process. Again, we get questions about water runoff a lot. There were some that came up in the last one. Again, I want to stress that there are processes that are required of this project. If it can't get through these and achieve the permits from the various agencies that review them, this project won't get built. Again, Kimley Horn is here. They have a lot of expertise in this, and if there's questions on these processes, I'd be glad to have them up here to further describe the due diligence that these projects must go through for water management. Agency feedback, we got some good comments from agency. I believe we're at a stage where, most of the initial comments were certainly acceptable and good comments. We made some adjustments and commitments in response to that. There were a few follow-up conversations with particularly the fire department, but I believe we're at a stage now where everyone's on board with the expectations and just waiting for that language from staff. Community feedback. On July 30th, we sent a letter to every single neighboring landowner voluntarily. This isn't required by ordinance, but we do that regardless. We invited them to a community meeting. We described the project, and I gave them my direct phone number and email. No neighboring landowners for Racehorse attended our community meeting. We did we did have contact with 4 neighboring landowners who reached out to us virtually via phone or email. 2 of them stated no opposition after asking questions. 1 of them didn't state an opinion, ask questions, and I was happy to give answers to. And the final, I had some issues and concerns pertaining to wetlands. Again, we have taken a harder look at wetlands. We had the good fortune of having our Wetland Delineation completed around that time. And we've been continuously trying to work and make sure that we are indeed avoiding those wetlands. It's come to my attention that there's a petition that came to my attention tonight. I'm certainly disappointed that I didn't have a chance to talk to these concerned neighbors beforehand. They were certainly invited to reach out, and they continue to be invited to reach out. I hope we do have an opportunity to talk further and hopefully assuage some of their concerns as this process continues. I've read their concerns in their letter. I'm prepared to answer them. I think a lot of those concerns have already been answered either by my presentation or by the earlier presentation, but I do want to make comments on that. I expect that we'll probably get some comments from them after this, so I'm going to hold my responses until I've gathered all their comments, and I'll be pleased to kind of go through what we would have to say in response to them, because they are important questions, and we do want to make sure that folks are comfortable, and look forward to continuing to be open and hopefully collaborate with the neighbors moving forward. I do think that there's good answers to their concerns, and hopefully they will be less concerned as we move forward. I'd like to end on this: benefits to local community, big ones, tax revenue. These numbers aren't as eye-popping as the earlier presentation. That's because this is a smaller project. Our land use numbers are also not as eye-popping. It's cost-efficient clean energy to be used locally. Again, I want to hammer on that point because that's something that most of these projects can't commit to, and we are. This project gets built, it will be because it's being sold to the utility for use and to the benefit of the local ratepayer and user. And of course, any construction project or ongoing operations do offer opportunities for local spending, both directly and indirectly on local vendors or service industry type businesses. So that's all I have now. Look forward to any questions you might have. Again, I expect some comments, and I will want to respond to those in addition to the comments that are raised in this letter at that time.
Do you know how far this location is from from Route 1 or 95, either one?
So I believe it's about a mile or more, 1.5 miles.
1.5?
Yes, Dr. Horton. It's 1.5 miles from Route 1 to the location on Quarters Road.
Okay, and I think you might have mentioned this, or it's in my packet. How long do you anticipate it will take to build it?
A smaller project like this, probably more like 3 to 4 months.
Okay. Thank you.
Sir, if I may.
Yes.
Do you have this in your presentation?
Not in my presentation.
Aerial view with all the little yellow dots?
That's not in my presentation, no. I think it's in the staff report. We could probably pull it up if you're asking if we can get it on the screen.
That was a map made by county staff.
By whom, sir?
County staff.
County staff. All right, because I'll be honest with you, my friend.
Yes, sir.
All of these little yellow dots cause me concern for how close they are.
Yeah, so I'm trying to squint my eyes. I assume those yellow dots are residential structures or
Yes,
any
sir.
structure?
Residential.
Okay. So I guess I first of all, yeah, sorry, it'd be nice to have a better view of that. So of these many yellow dots, I would think that the only that have actual opportunity of having visual impact are the ones that are across Quarters Road there.
That are what's that?
Across Quarters Road. The rest are separated by several hundred to thousands of feet and wetlands with mature vegetation. That said, there are a significant number of properties across Quarters Road, and that is a primary concern of ours to make sure that those are buffered because there's not existing vegetation there. And they are close to the project. There, I can see a half dozen or a dozen homes there that we have known for a long time that would be our number one priority when it came to visually screening this project.
Yes, sir. Those residences along Quarters Road going all the way down to French Lane and even just a little bit beyond that.
Yep.
I do have some concerns about that, just to be quite honest and upfront with you about it.
I share those concerns, and I agree that's going to be a focus that's going to be required of this project to make sure that those residences aren't negatively impacted. I do think that the 150 feet plus 75-foot buffer, which is quite robust compared to other places in the state, is a really good start. I think we can build off that to ensure that essentially it looks like woods across the street from their house.
I concur with you, and that would be my point if I were living there, is what do I see across the road?
Yeah, that's, we have had a lot of conversation on that internally. That is far and away our biggest concern on this project. I hope the residences that are concerned understand that we are also concerned about that. And we want to work with you. We voluntarily reached out and asked for comments, and there's still time in this process to continue doing that. And we look forward to collaboration because we're going to have to collaborate to make sure that these
So
people
because to be, here again, open and honest with everyone, until that issue is resolved, I would not be prepared to go forward with this.
I find that to be an understandable position, and I certainly wish to collaborate with those neighbors and have further discussion because I agree. I'd be nervous if I lived there too, and this is a new thing to me. I do think that there are responses to their concerns, and again, I assume we're going to hear more about those in a sec, and I'm going to respond to those along with the letter. Again, I also think a lot of them have already been responded to roughly so far, but I look forward to getting into more details. I don't want to burn more time right now doing that, though.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Any other questions right now? I'll probably be back.
Well, I've also looked at the list of names that are here. And I think even this, I'm sorry. Can't sit that close. I've also looked at all the names that are on this list, okay?
Yes, sir.
And if I look at this drawing, which is one that you had proposed.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I can't count about 30 houses, just looking at the little squares that are indicated there all around this site. I think that's a lot of residential homes that are going to be affected by the construction. Maybe
Okay.
not the solar panels, because we've gone out, we looked at the solar panels. But maybe the construction that's going to disturb these 31 houses or whatever they are, okay? I don't know. I'm between the rock and a hard spot on this one. I'm explaining to you why, okay? I mean, the room is not filled with the 31 people, but this is a legitimate letter, so.
Sure.
I don't know.
Would you invite comments on that comment?
Would I like what?
Would you invite comments on that comment?
Well, again, I look at the idea of the construction, okay, and that's something that I know quite a bit about.
Sure.
I just don't know. I gotta be honest.
I would just point out that this is a relatively short construction cycle, and we're certainly amenable to conditions on time of day or anything else you might want to propose as far as making sure construction's not overly burdensome to the neighbors.
All right, you want to open it up?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to open this up to the public hearing, SPEX 05-2021. The public hearing is now open. Anyone wishes to speak on this application, please step up to the microphone.
Good evening. How are y'all doing? My name is Nathan Sullivan. I live at 6337 Quarters Road, and I'm the one that instigated the petition, and my name is the top name on the list. You've already read the letter?
Yes, I have.
I take it. So
Yes.
I don't need to read that.
No,
Okay,
but if you want to speak about
Yes,
some
the
of your
names
data-
that are on this, I'm here to represent those people, are basically all the owners that lived touching that project. I couldn't get any more. There's 38 on there now since I submitted it the other day. But basically, I haven't talked to anybody in that area that is for this project. Basically, the people across Quarters Road, they're on the west side. That's the way those panels are going to be pointing in the evenings when they track to the west. Some of the concerns have already been addressed: the erosion, destruction of wildlife and domain, creating an eyesore, lack of a good neighbor, and the question about who has spoken for the electricity, because a lot of these go for green energy credits for large companies, has already been answered, that it is supposed to go to REC and not a bank for these big companies to offset some project they're doing somewhere else. The proposal is a 30-year lease, and the same question I have: who cleans up the mess when it's done? Are these people going to still be there? And I'm not asking questions. This is just the concern that I have. I don't see how they help with global warming. This is part of the clean energy thing. I don't see how a field full of mirrors is going to be any cooler than farmland or forest land. And I think a lot of this is what I would call a field of dreams that's kind of set up to make it look good for investors, big companies, because of the green energy portfolio that they're investing in green energy, which, you know, that's okay if it's bought up by a big company. If it goes bankrupt, they don't have anything to lose, and it's a tax write-off for them. So I think the whole thing is just not right for our particular area, and especially because of the number of people that live right around the edge of it, which the gentleman on the left brought up, and all of you. I think the big concern, this just isn't the right place for it. Another thing, the farmer that we have, we live on the other third of this farm that's being developed. Donnie Terrell's been farming that land longer than I can remember. And
Sure, we've got to limit you to 3 minutes.
okay, what happens with farm labor? I mean, there's a whole lot of exchange here. Thank you all for listening to me this evening. I'd be glad to answer any questions or.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well, do we have a rebut, or do we see anybody else want to speak? Anybody else want to speak on this application at this time? Going once, going twice. Okay, please.
I'm Ray Siebel. I live at 6304 French Lane, directly across the road, Quarters Road from this project. I moved to Caroline County because of the rural setting and the fresh air and everything. and I have done some investigating, and the cornfield of between 40 and 60 acres removes 48 million pounds of carbon dioxide from the air each year and produces enough oxygen for roughly 400,000 people to breathe. At the same time, it could produce enough food and food products each year to feed a town of 1,500 people. I don't think this is something that the county wants to trade for solar panels. I would recommend that this company investigates putting solar panels on top of every Walmart and shopping center in the state. If they did that, every Walmart has a stormwater plan already in effect. There wouldn't be any maintenance under the solar panels. They wouldn't have to put up any fencing, wouldn't have to put up any buffers, and wouldn't have any ground maintenance. But I recommend they deny this based on the trade-off of oxygen for solar panels. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Evening. I'm Susan Sullivan. I own the other half of the farm that's about to be changed for the rest of my life if this passes. I've cried my eyes out. I'm not going to do it again now. I must have known this was going to happen since 3rd grade because I made this little poster. And I just wanted you to see. The little red dots represent homes and wells that are touching at the adjacent property, the farm, not the other houses all around here, just the ones that are in line. This is me. This farm, this is the home. They built it on the highest part of the farm. So it has a good view. They want to put these panels, the dark green are trees. The light green is a field, the farm field that the farmers using. This is the pond. There's a deep ravines in here, the wetland that my husband brought up and mentioned to them that how can they cut these trees down and put panels here when the ravines are in here. And the people that came in and did that, what is it called, Nate? The ones that the conservatives, the surveyors. It was wet, it was rainy weather, and they never marked this, okay? And up here, in these trees, it's gonna be a 30-foot ravine in here. In the winter, when it's cold, when I was younger, I'd get at the top, and I would slide down that ravine on the leaves, and it's like 30 feet high, okay? To put the solar up, the trees have to be cut down, okay? I'm sorry. Like I said, I did this in 3rd grade, okay? So all the panels are gonna be facing me, us right here in this, and plus these folks down here, I'm sorry. So all this. Now, he has allowed a little more here now because of Nate, my husband's letting them know that this was, I'm sorry. Do you get the picture? I'm sorry. But that's too many homes, too many wells. If there is some sort of disaster, hurricane, they've got PFAs and all kinds of chemicals in those panels. If they get broken, those are wells, and those are all Chesapeake Bay drainage. Right? That's all I have to say. Please don't pass this. It would devastate me. I've walked these woods for decades. I love them. I don't want them torn down.
Thank you, ma'am. Do we have rebut? Well, I mean, you want to close the public hearing and then, or you want to allow them? Anybody else wish to speak at this time? He forgot his glasses. Okay. I'm going to close the public hearing at this particular time. Okay, I guess I would like to hear from the applicant.
Right, the applicant has 10 minutes to respond.
Yes, that's what I'm asking. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, clearly, this is an emotional issue for some. Again, we weren't aware of these concerns until we walked in the door today. I do think that there are good answers, and I'm about to go over as best I can my response to the questions I've heard tonight. But I would request perhaps a deferral tonight. I certainly don't think I'm going to like the outcome if I ask for a vote tonight.
Could you speak up, please?
I just say I would request a deferral tonight based on the fact that clearly there's some neighbors who have some concerns that appear to be unresolved. I'm going to do my best to respond to those now, but I would like the opportunity to conduct more outreach to the neighbors.
Chris, can we accept a deferral at this time?
Well, I think he wants to.
I do want to go over my points just for posterity.
And I have some comments before we make any motion.
Okay.
So of the comments I've heard tonight or read in that letter, which, you know, the 38 some odd people have signed on to, I'll begin with the comments that are listed as the concerns of those signing the letter. Some of them, it sounds like they were satisfied with the responses based on one of the comments I heard tonight, but I'm just going to kind of go over as best I can anyway. The erosion and ground cover issue, as I mentioned, that is a concern with every project, and that's why there's a process that this project must go through. It'll be planted in grasses specifically designed to maintain the integrity of the ground cover, and it will have to go through a permitting process for runoff during construction and a separate permitting process for runoff during operations, and it can't be built if we're unable to achieve those permits. So I would just note that that is looked after through a permitting process that is robust, and we will do that before this project's built. Destruction of wildlife and domain. Currently it's not, large part of this project is not natural habitat. It's cornfield. There are, of course, some woods, but we have done our desktop due diligence so far and determined that there's no critical habitats, they're endangered species known in the area. We'll have to do further due diligence as part of the PBR process, and citizenry has the right to comment during that process as well. Creation of an eyesore, that assumes you can see the panels. I think I've been pretty clear that our goal is the opposite of that. It's our objective, and we'll lay out a plan for doing so in addition to sort of the base level commitments we've made so far. At the correct time in the process, get that approved by the county, and put forth a financial surety to ensure that we are achieving what we say we will. If we don't, the project will be paying for additional measures. Lack of a good neighbor. That's kind of a vague concern. I would disagree. A lot of people that we've heard from on this and other projects say, we like having a quiet neighbor, better than a housing development. If there's specific good neighbor concerns in addition to these other points that were arisen, I'd be happy to respond to them. But again, a little vague. I disagree. Begs the question, we've spoken for the electricity. I think we've gone over that. This project will be sold to the utility to the benefit of the ratepayers. Proposal of 30-year lease lifespan, 20 to 30 years. This comes up a lot. I think there's a misunderstanding, the difference between a warranty and expected lifespan. A lot of these panels are warranted by the manufacturer to have an output for a certain period of time, often somewhere between 20 and 30 years. That gets misconstrued on Google by people saying that these panels only last 20 to 30 years. Just like my Toyota has warranty for 3 years, I expect it to last a heck of a lot longer. These panels are expected to last 35 to 50 years. Kind of a moot point, because the real concern here is what happens when these panels are done. And I think we've gone over, myself and the previous applicant, that there is a very robust decommissioning process and funds set aside. No one's going to be left holding the bag in the unlikely event that this goes belly up and no one wants to decommission it. Further, I heard comments about the panels pointing to the west at the end of the day, pointing at the neighbors. I would note that these panels stop at 30 degrees. If you do the trigonometry, you have to be very high in elevation to be facing directly in the elevation, the direction the panels are facing. Once you're like 50 feet away, you have to be very high in the air to an impossible angle, essentially, from any neighbors. The panels don't go all the way to the edge. They stop at 30 degrees. So they're never going to be pointing directly at a neighbor's house. And on to the next point, I heard someone call this a field of mirrors. There are no mirrors involved. I'm afraid they may be confusing that with concentrated solar technology, which uses mirrors, but is as different a technology from what we're proposing here as a wind turbine would be. It's just a different technology. There are no mirrors here. These are PV panels, which are designed to absorb light, not reflect it. Reflected light is wasted energy. They have a coating on them, especially designed to absorb all the light. So there's no mirrors, and they're not pointing at the neighbors' houses. I want to make those two distinctions. Also heard comments about chemicals in the panels. That comes up a ton if you Google it. I think the county's done their due diligence on that. I'd be happy to provide further research. One was noted from University of North Carolina. Recently, there was another study put out within our own state by Virginia Tech on this matter. There's really no feasible scenario where there's any sort of dangerous chemicals in these panels, and certainly none where certainly no scenario where any panels are leaching any sort of chemicals. The things used to build these panels are things that are used in everyday electronics all over the Commonwealth and all over this county already. So that's all I have for now. Again, I would agree with people who have said this is not ready to be moved on with a recommendation for approval. I was hit with a lot of opposition I didn't know existed until I walked in this door. I've made myself available to the neighbors, continue to make myself available to the neighbors. I'll do another round of outreach and hopefully be able to disseminate some better information to these neighbors about this project. I do believe this is a good project. I do believe we can screen it adequately from those vulnerable neighbors across the street. We share that concern, and we will do right by them, ensure that their way of life is not impeded by this project. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
I have a question, please.
Oh, please.
How many acres of trees do you anticipate cutting down?
That's a good question. A minority of the project, we're anticipating a footprint of 52 acres. Trees probably, Sean, do you know offhand? I would, well, yeah, I would disagree with that 40 number, but I would say more like 20 or less.
How many?
I would say more like 20 or less, but that's kind of spitballing. 40 doesn't sound right because the majority of the project is currently in cropland and it's only 52-acre footprint.
It looks like from the maps we were given, it looks like a little over half is still in forest.
Okay.
So if that's true, I guess it's more like possibly 70, I guess.
Well, again, the entire footprint for the project is projected to be 52 acres. So I just want to make sure we're all speaking
Okay. So
the same language here.
So the acreage here, okay, then maybe staff might need to explain. 145 acres with 52 acres having solar equipment.
145 acres of property, 56 in the development envelope, i.e. the area that we are asking for permission to site this project within. We estimate that the project will have a footprint of 52. So there's a couple of wiggle room acres there that we probably won't need.
Okay, so if we do defer this, when you come back, could you let us know, pretty close estimate of how many acres of trees would need to be cut?
Sure. I mean, I can tell you right now, it's
I'm sure we'll go out and look at the property, but.
sure.
And I've
Yeah,
been
you know
over
what? I
there.
won't speculate. I can get that number for
But
you next
yeah,
time.
that would be another concern.
Sure. I am fairly certain it is less than half of the 56 acres we were looking to permit.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for me at this time? Okay, well, thanks for hearing my presentation, and I look forward to putting in some more work with the neighbors and hopefully getting everyone comfortable.
So, Mr. Weaver, I have some more comments. So I'm not sure if, because this is in my district, Port Royal district, if the constituents heard what happens to these solar projects once they're done. They're required by law to return them to farmland, okay? So I don't think everybody heard that tonight, but they're not vacated, and just all the equipment left. Now, Caroline, the Port Royal district, which is my district, is mostly in Eastern Carolina, so it's mostly in an agricultural area. A piece of my district does kind of hit the Western Carolina area. The dilemma that you folks have is that you're right there in the 95 and Route 1 corridor. So, and this project is 1.5 miles from Route 1, and I assume within 2.5 miles of 95. So there is a lot of pressure. Some of the people in that area don't want to farm their farms anymore. And, so you got to kind of start thinking in your own minds, what do you want to have beside you? And your supervisor, Nancy Long, and myself, we're all ears to hear what you want happen over there. But there's a lot of pressure. Western Carolina is, slated for development. You need to start thinking, do you want housing developments near you? Do you want something quieter like a solar farm? Do you want a shopping center? So Western Carolina, you've got to be thinking. And, talking to your representatives. That's all I had to say.
Okay, can we have a motion to defer, sir?
Sir?
Can you make a motion to defer?
Yes, I would like to make a motion, whereas the general welfare and good zoning practice warrants, I move to defer SPEX 05-2021 to our next meeting for further discussion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.
And I think we should definitely be taking a look at this property too and see how close it is to these homes and.
Yeah, to Route 1 too.
And yeah, it's the paperwork says about 1.5 miles, and then staff confirmed that for me.
Okay, so we move along. All right. We're going to move along to special SPX 06-2021. Have the staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant, Whalebone Solar, is seeking special exception permit approval for a minor solar energy facility as per Article 4, Section 5.40 of the Caroline County Zoning Ordinance. This facility will be located across 2 parcels on Route 2, approximately 3.5 miles south of the Spotsylvania County line. This project utilizes approximately 12.5 acres of the 30 acres associated with these properties. This facility will provide up to 3 megawatts of renewable energy to the REC power grid. As this project is under 5 megawatts of production, it is exempt from the machinery and tools tax. However, the applicant is proposing a condition that the applicant make voluntary payments equal to the amount of machinery and tools tax or revenue share taxes that a project of this size would pay if the state exemption were not in effect. The applicant has addressed the VDOT comments regarding entrance design with an updated GDP. The applicant has had conversations with Fire and Rescue regarding their comments. The applicant has addressed these comments with an updated GDP and is pending a second review by the Fire and Rescue Department. The Planning Department had minor comments regarding labeling on this GDP that have been addressed. Fort AP Hill has requested that due to the proximity of this project to Fort AP Hill, that the applicant send this application through the Military Aviation and Installation Assurance Siting Clearinghouse. The applicant has begun that process with an application. The Caroline County Comprehensive Plan identifies this area as rural preservation. This project is consistent with the comprehensive plan as the zoning ordinance identifies RP as a zoning district in which minor solar facilities are allowed. Staff is still working on conditions and we'll have them in the future for this project.
Okay, Craig, just a quick question. You said the applicant has already submitted to AP Hill for their approval, or?
It doesn't go to AP Hill. It goes to a federal agency to look at projects that are around military airfields where flying takes place or regular. And so they have submitted to them at AP Hill's request, but they've also been told that it will be some time before they get an answer to their application.
Well, I guess my question is, all right, if this federal agency decides that they don't like this, for whatever reason, okay, could they just say, no, you can't build that project?
We would need to do some further research into this agency and the clearinghouse. With the AP Hill comment and the applicant making application, we need to follow up and do some more research as to how this agency works with the state code regarding solar facilities.
You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
guys hear what I'm saying? I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah, we thought of that.
I mean, if this federal agency decides that they don't want to do this project, I mean, we don't have a lot of choice, do we? And how long did this federal agency say they were gonna?
They just said there would be some time before they had a response to it. At this time, going through the federal agency for aviation is not a requirement by the state for solar facilities. And so that's why I said that we would need to do some more research as to the coordination between this federal clearinghouse and the state code regarding solar.
I don't know, Mr. Attorney. Question I have here is, based on the fact that it's like if VDOT suddenly came in and said, guys, you can't use that road, okay? I'm concerned that we're going and looking over all this paperwork and asking all these questions, when we're really not sure whether or not this is actually a legitimate project that can be built.
Yeah, that's a valid concern, and I think I can work with staff to get a handle on this federal issue, but from a legal perspective, the issue is going to be that, whether there's a federal law out there that can preempt the local approval. That even though it's got zoning approval, we're allowed to block it because of this federal law. We don't know whether or not that exists. And we don't know how long the federal process is going to take. So we don't have answers to that question as to whether federal law is going to impact this in any way. But as you know, I mean, from a hierarchy perspective, generally, we need to comply with all federal laws, and they would preempt state and local law if there was an applicable law. We just don't know if there is one.
AP Hill was the one who said they wanted to pass this to whatever organization.
Right.
Okay. I just don't want to go through a whole bunch of baloney here, guys, and really investigate a project if we're not even sure whether or not this project can proceed. That's all I'm saying.
Mr. Weaver, I will say that, from a procedural standpoint right now, the application is before you. So it needs to be heard and presented, like any other application. You can make the same motions that you make on any other application: approve, deny, defer, based on the concerns you have. But the application's been filed, it's scheduled for public hearing, so you do need to proceed with it like any other application that's postured that way.
Okay, so what you're saying is because it come before us, then this is an application that has to be heard for a public hearing.
Correct.
But now,
Let's do the public.
he could go to, you want to just do the public hearing?
Yeah.
We need to do, we let the applicant do their
It's
presentation.
been advertised legally. We have to do the
Okay.
public hearing.
Thank you, Craig. I'm just trying to catch up with this one. Okay, I'm gonna,
But Mr. Weaver, we have the applicant first to do their presentation, then
I
public
want the
comment.
applicant to make his presentation
Yeah,
first.
yeah.
Okay, Mr. Applicant, please make your presentation.
Hello again. Seth Montesolinesco here to present the Whalebone Solar Project. I promise this will be a much quicker presentation. Can't try not to be redundant. I do actually have a lot more information though about the clearinghouse process, so hopefully that'll put your mind at ease, sir. Although it was a new one to me as well. So again, same general technology type as the previous Whalebone project. The biggest difference here, this is a much smaller project. This is a 3 megawatt project as opposed to a 12 megawatt project. We expect it to be only about 12 acres. Same deal. We are in final negotiations with the PPA with ODEC so that this electricity can be used locally to the benefit of the local ratepayer. Same sort of features in our site plan, only you'll see less homes. The one home that is near there to the south, talked to that landowner, he's stated no opposition. Get into that in a sec, but we're looking for the rights to develop on up to 18 acres, but again, 12 acres is what we expect the final fenced-in acreage to be. Again, staying in compliance with the zoning ordinance as far as setbacks. You'll see along the highway there, we have an additional setback. That's because there's a power line there and then existing evergreen vegetation in that area. It's more trouble than it's worth to try to develop that and maintain a 150-foot setback. So instead, we're just giving that all back and keeping that buffer there. So there is a robust vegetative buffer and setback in place because of existing conditions, and we're just going to leave that there along the highway there. Again, we are showing a preliminary layout. This is based on what we know of land today, how we would lay this project out. It takes up about 12.5 acres. It avoids that water feature you see kicking into the bottom there. That has been delineated. Same proposal as far as buffer area. Within the buffer area, immediate planting of the evergreen trees, staggered 2 rows for the near term, and then the longer term is that plus any native vegetation that grows in the area for a robust vegetative buffer for the life of the project, in addition to the assurances, the plan, all that. If something goes awry, there are methods in place that the county can take control and make sure it is buffered at our dime. In this case, because of the much smaller disrupted area, DEQ has a slightly different process. It's a little bit less strenuous, again, because there's just lower risk with a smaller disturbed area. This process applies to any project that's under 5 megawatts. We're at 3 megawatts. Still have to do our due diligence, but some of the processes, such as the cultural resource, can be done just via desktop, assuming there's no hits. Obviously, if there are some concerns from the desktop review, we would have to go out and do a full field survey. Again, Kimley Horns here, they're the ones that are managing this process for us. They can speak to this process and how it might be different than some of the larger processes, processes. Agency feedback, again, same comments for most of the agencies. We believe we're aligned as far as expectations. The one caveat or difference is the AP Hill comments, and want to get into some detail there, especially since there's already been some questions raised. AP Hill has explicitly expressed concern over glint and glare disrupting their flight patterns as they do their perimeter flights. They've said as a mitigation measure for this concern, they would like us to go through what's called the Military Aviation and Installation Siting Clearinghouse. This is being asked of us voluntarily. We could say no. The county could say we want it. We could still say no. In that case, I doubt we get passed. But this is not a requirement. This is something APL has asked us to do voluntarily. In the interest of making stakeholders comfortable, we're willing to do it. We don't think there's any possibility we're going to fail this thing. Our only concern is timeline. Even if we do fail this thing, I'm not aware of any way that makes us, unless you guys make it a condition, which we're fine with. I'm not aware of any reason that would make us unable to build it. This is a thing they're asking us to do voluntarily. We're not required by law to complete it. We're just simply doing it to calm some concerns from AP Hill. And as I point out in this presentation, we think those concerns are a little bit outdated. There's numerous examples of PV projects just like this one, up to quite a bit larger than this one, that are installed all across the country on military aviation fields, including at Oceana right down there. There's an 18 megawatt solar farm that's right at the end of the runway. We've hired a consultant to shepherd us through this clearinghouse project because it was a new one to us, and we've talked to them about it, and they said, you guys are going to have no problem clearing this. This is just a formality. They've said, they've pointed out that just this year, the FAA in May updated their requirements stating that glints and glare are not worth a review for when it comes to flight path. It's only when it comes to possible impact on flight towers, which this project has no possibility of. We see this as a formality. We see this as, there's no chance we're going to fail this thing. So we're willing to voluntarily go through it if it will calm some concerns. Again, we think these concerns are outdated. Our only concern is that this process might take a while. As you know, federal bureaucracy, we're dealing with the Pentagon on this. And our only concern would be if you made this a predecessor to us getting our SCP. We were fine with it being a condition of us building this project. And I'm not aware of any legal requirement for us to go through this process, nor am I aware of any legal requirement that would prohibit us from building this project, even if we did get a negative result, which I'm fairly confident is a almost nil chance. The consultant that we're using is a former fighter pilot, former Pentagon official, and one of the people who put this process together. He's consulting us. He says we're going to have no problem with this. So hopefully that answers your question. We're not concerned about it. We're voluntarily committing to it to make people feel comfortable. We don't think there's an issue here. And hopefully this doesn't hang up our process. Finally, community feedback, same deal. We hosted a meeting. In this case, we did have 2 neighbors come and visit. Of the neighbors who are actually touching the property, we've had all positive comments. We did have one neighbor, who I believe is here today, hello, come to the meeting, ask some really good questions. Seems he may have some concerns still, and look forward to hearing what they are and further discussing. I was happy that after answering your questions the other day, he seemed to feel a little bit better, and look forward to continued discussions there. But any neighbor who's touching this property has expressed, we've met them all in person, they've all expressed no opposition. To be fair, one of them is the landowner on this project, so of course they're in opposition. But the neighbor to the north and the south, including the southern neighbor who has a home right there, said no opposition. Neighbor to the north said, I support this project and I wish you luck. The other neighbor, of course, across the street is AP Hill. The last thing I want to talk about is local tax benefits. Being under 5 megawatts, this project is exempt from both M&T and revenue share should you decide to implement revenue share. We want to amend that. We want to voluntarily pay in accordance to what other minority projects, including Racehorse or another project over 5 megawatts, would pay. We've had our attorneys put together some proposed language that we've given to staff, and would be pleased to make a contribution in kind with the size of our project. Again, not an eye-popping number, but when you look at the land use, it's proportional, and it's much better tax revenue than this project, than this site would otherwise generate under other reasonable uses that it might see. And that's all I got for this one. If I've left anything out, it's because it would have been redundant with the last presentation. In the interest of all our time, I knew this would be the last presentation, but if you want to go over any of those items again, I'd be happy to do so.
We'd open the public hearing, right, sir? I'm now opening the public hearing for SPEX 06-2021. Anyone wish to speak on this application?
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
My name's John Van Deventer, and I have 1,000 feet of common property line on this property. Some of the gentlemen said that all the landowners had been contacted about this meeting that they were going to have so they could explain what the project. I never heard anything. I heard it from a neighbor, and the neighbor heard it from another neighbor that heard it from another neighbor. So as far as us being contacted, knowing about this, I didn't. One of the biggest things I have is the runoff. Because it's under a 5 megawatt plant, then they don't have to have a stormwater runoff plant. And where there's things going to sit, that land runs just like that, which runs into my land, down into my bottom. That concerns me. Another thing, he talks about adequate setback. Is it adequate to who? Might be adequate to them. He lives in Reston. I have to wake up every morning and look at that out of my backyard. So it being adequate, I appreciate you guys going out and look at these things too. But right now, if I look at my backyard, I can't see that man's field. This winter, I can see all the way to Route 2, which is about 1,400 foot from my house. So right now you can't see it, but 6 months of the year you can. He's talking about planting a 4-foot tree. How long is it going to take him 4-foot trees to grow to where you can't see these things? The runoff, we're planting grass. I don't know how many of you guys have a shed in your yard. Do they have gutters on them? And what's around that shed where that water runs off? It eats that grass up, and where does it go? So, they want to do a 13-acre thing here, and they want you guys to give them a permit for 30 acres. And I really don't understand why they need 30 acres if they're only going to have 15 of it in solar panels. So. Thank you all. I think that's all I got.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wish to speak on special exception 06-2021? Going twice. Anyone else wish to speak on this application? Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. This time, what we should do, let them.
Yeah, he's got 10 minutes of response.
Okay, you have 10 minutes.
We'll take all of it.
Okay.
I appreciate the concerns. Thanks for coming tonight. Couple of clarifications. There was recently a boundary line adjustment on these properties by the current landowner. As such, there is a new parcel that exists between this landowner and the project parcels that we're trying to permit. As such, he didn't receive a letter because he's not a directly adjacent neighbor. We have to stop somewhere. Perhaps we should do a wider radius, and maybe in the future we will. But that answers the question as to why he didn't get a letter. I'm sorry you didn't. I'm glad you found out about the meeting, and it was a pleasure talking to you the other day. And again, look forward to continued collaboration if you have continued concerns. But there may be some confusion here. The boundary line has shifted. There is now an entire parcel between this gentleman's property and the project parcel that we're looking at here. And I just think there's a little confusion there. I want to make that clarification. The runoff and erosion sediment control, while there is an abbreviated DEQ PBR process for this smaller project, the ENS and the stormwater management process is the exact same as Racehorse would go through, the exact same as that larger project would go through. That process still exists. Water runoff will still be, due diligence for water runoff will still be maintained. So just want to make that assurance and that correction. I get how my presentation may have indicated that that wasn't required anymore, but it absolutely is. It was left out because it was redundant. This gentleman, when we spoke the other day, we measured the distance between his home and the area we were looking to permit for panels. We found it to be 1/3 of a mile. I had hoped and thought that had calmed his concerns, and perhaps not, and we're happy to keep talking to him. In addition, there is a buffer area between this property and the adjacent property, even though the adjacent property is the same landowner, because it's required. We're putting trees in and letting that grow for the life of the project. So there will be buffer essentially between his property and this property, regardless of the fact that there's a property in between. He asked how fast those trees go. I have an answer for that. On average, 1.5 feet per year. So planted at 4 feet, after 3 years, they're high enough to overtake the highest parts of the project. In addition, we have that hands-off natural vegetative state area. We do believe that what we're proposing is adequate and in line with what the county has requested. He pointed out that we're looking for a permit for 30 acres for a 12-acre project. Not quite correct. We're looking for a permit for a development envelope of 18 acres. That means we are looking for the rights to develop up to 18 acres, not the full 30 acres, not the wetlands, not the setback. That is all eaten out of that 30 acres. We're looking to permit 18 acres and expect to use 12.5. I think that is reasonable. I think I've addressed everything. Thanks for your time.
Sir, before you leave, so I have 3 questions that I want to clarify for my constituent, and then I have 3 of my own. Okay, so the reason you need 30 acres is because you're going to have, some of it's going to be in boundaries, some of it's going to be planted in borderline trees, shrubbery, things like that. And I believe some of it is you can't put panels on because it's wetland, correct?
Yeah.
So this is the reason you're needing more land.
So the reason
then the panels take up.
The reason the number 30 is in the application is because that's the totality of the acreage of those parcels. There's 3 10-acre parcels that we're looking to develop on. That's the only reason that number 30 exists. We're looking to, we are leasing all 30 acres, but what we are asking for is permission to develop solar panels on only up to 18 of them.
And what type of trees are you planting?
We're proposing green giant arborvitae. We're open to alternatives. Our consultants.
That's an evergreen?
Yes, our consultants have proposed that is a good option for immediate and quick.
That grows about how high?
How high total, or at what rate?
How, you said it would, 3 years it would be.
We're putting them in at 4 feet. We understand that they grow on average 1.5 feet per year.
Okay, all right. So they're going to be possibly 7 feet or more. And
after 3 years, is that the math?
Yeah, after 3 years. And you did say you had
3 years, 7 feet.
So do we have a copy of the runoff plan?
No, that comes much later in the process once we've done final engineering.
But that will be submitted.
It is absolutely required. We cannot build this project without that step.
Okay, so that I wanted to help out my constituent a little bit. For me, and some of these questions you may have answered, but I don't, with the mics and all, I don't always hear all the answers.
Absolutely.
It's a small enough project that this one's going to take how long to build if it's approved?
I would guess 2 months. Either of you have thoughts? this is a tiny project relatively. I want to be respectful that 12 acres isn't nothing, but we're talking about a period of a couple months, depending on weather.
On these projects, do we have a limit that has to be built within it? Well, what's the limit? How long do they have to build them?
All special exceptions have to be constructed within 2 years.
That's what I thought, within 2 years.
Is that
Okay.
constructed or start construction?
Start construction.
And you said something about a revenue sharing plan that I'd be interested when you present that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not going to say anything else, but I'll be interested.
We've put it forward to the county. We're ready to talk whenever you guys are.
Yeah,
and
that's probably presented to staff. I know.
right, Dr. Horton, that's part of this new solar law that I think we touched on when we were talking about the solar ordinance.
Yeah.
But that is ultimately a decision that's going to be made by county administration based on the numbers for the real short version is, the county gets to pick between revenue share and MNT.
Yeah.
And then, the county just needs to look at the numbers and say which one's the better choice.
And this is a smaller project, so he's not required to do it. And that's why I told him I'd be interested.
Yeah, but it would be the same calculus for all of them. But we need to figure out what's best for Caroline County as far as which of those options to go for. And that's in process.
Okay.
And part of that is usually the county would need to make that decision before a project goes through. Otherwise, it just goes through tax at M&T for this one and Racehorse. And I believe some other projects that have been proposed in the county, we are waiving that and giving the county until final site plan to decide at which rate they want to tax these projects. And we're doing that for this project as well.
And a couple more quick questions. Do you know how far or does staff know how far this project is from Long Branch
I'm not sure.
Road?
Yeah, we didn't do a measurement to Long Branch.
Okay.
I can tell you it's 3.5 miles from the Spotsylvania County line.
Well, yeah, I mean, I live in that general area, so I know where it's going in. And I think, we need to the commissioners want to take a look at it and all. I just wondered, how far it is from those houses on Long Branch Road. So we'll have to take a look at that. Okay. And lastly, I know it is across from the airstrip at AP Hill, and that's their concern. But I know they'll stop us in our tracks no matter, if they want to override it. I do know they've done that in Spotsylvania, so.
That's the only reason I brought it up.
Yeah, so, but in the meantime, we'll keep looking at it, but, just with the realization that federal government, Uncle Sam has the last say sometimes.
I would say that they've stated their conditions of satisfaction, and we are confident enough that we'll be able to meet those conditions. We're willing to keep putting money into developing this project while we're awaiting those results. It's, to us, a formality. And we'd be happy to have that be a condition from the county. I think that would satisfy AP Hill if you just said before construction, they must pass this process. We'd be fine with that.
Well, Carol, I think what you said, and I believe the commissioners also feel the same way. For these three projects, we should go out and look at these sites to determine what we feel is going to hurt that particular area. And if we see something that we say, oh, I don't know where that entrance is going to be, and then we suddenly find out that entrance is right next to somebody's house, then we want to know that. So I do agree. When we started this whole thing with the solar projects, I had said to Mr. Fincham that I think that this is a large burden on the planning commissioners, and I think we should be able to go out and look at these sites to determine if there's any adverse effect. Not just from what the people are saying, but what do we feel as commissioners? Is there an adverse effect? So,
will the entrance be by the electrical substation or?
So we've had conversations with VDOT about this specifically. That current entrance is probably not suitable, at least for construction. We'd probably be doing an entrance to the south, which is where the current landowner already had an entrance planned for his alternative.
To the south of where that substation entrance is?
Yes.
Off of Route 2?
That's right.
Okay.
There's greater side distances there. The problem with by the the substation is it comes out at an angle and the site distances already aren't great because of the topography. So it's been proposed to us that we move that, at least for construction down there. It's all in our general development plan, sort of our primary entrance. And then the top entrance will remain open for access for the landowner for his adjacent properties and
Well,
whatnot.
Craig, I would
Doesn't
ask
involve us.
you, Craig, if you could set up some kind of schedule, the planning commissioners and developer, if this young man wants to come out and show us what he thinks with each site, I would like to see that.
Be pleased to do that.
I'll take care of that.
Okay, thank you very much. Right?
Yeah, well, we can work with staff. To avoid a meeting, a quorum, you'll have to do it, in pairs of two. We'll work on.
Well, usually we do it 2 or 3 at a time.
Yeah.
Right?
Two.
2 at a time? Okay, 2 at a time. That's what we did last time.
Yeah, two.
That's fine.
Mr. Chairman, I do have 3 very quick questions for you, sir, if you please. You've heard quite a few comments about construction noise. You going to make more noise than building a hospital?
I don't see why I would make more.
How about a church?
What, pardon me?
How about a church? You can make more noise than building a church?
Depends on the construction type, I suppose.
How about a school?
Again, depends on the construction. The noisiest part of these is really when we're pile driving the basically pieces of steel into I-beams into the ground.
Right.
I don't know if the county has specific restrictions on pile driving activities. Some counties do. We'd be amenable to, constructing hours when that isn't acceptable, or maybe just have restrictions on construction in general.
Our county code has a noise ordinance that addresses construction noise.
Yeah.
And so it's the standard hours of the noise ordinance. Construction can start at, I think it's 6 a.m. during, 6 to 11 would be construction noise allowed.
6 to 11 a.m. or p.m.?
6 a.m. to 11 p.m.
That's pretty liberal. With this project, there's not a lot of houses directly adjacent. Obviously, that one's a bigger issue. With both, we'd be amenable to restricting that down a little bit for pile driving activities anyway. That's really the only noisy part. Other than that, it's wrenching panels.
And you're still going to have some buffering around the perimeters, correct?
Yes, we're still going to, same commitments as the other project.
So that's going to soften the impact somewhat, I would imagine.
Yeah, I guess. I think we're required to plant the evergreen trees as a first step in the construction process. So those will be in place. And on this project, a lot of it is existing vegetation.
Right.
We got,
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Sure. Any other questions for me?
I don't think so.
Thank you.
Want to make a motion?
Before I do, Mr. Pennington, whose property is this? Whose land is this?
This land would be owned by Mr. Garrison.
Okay, yeah. I remember I had inquired about that before, but I forgot who's. Yeah. Are we ready?
Any other questions? Okay. Kyle, can I have a motion, please?
So I'd like to make a motion, whereas the general welfare and good zoning practice warrants, I move to defer SPEX 06/2021 to our next meeting for further discussion.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None, motion carries. Mr. Finch, we have anything in any and all matters? Zach? No? None? Okay,
No, sir. No any and all matters.
okay, very good. Let's have a motion to adjourn to September 23rd.
So moved.
Second. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.